Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Sy Huffer and Friends. This is a podcast that's designed to help you flourish at life and relationships. And when I wanted to do a podcast about this, the reason why I chose to call Sy Huffer and Friends is because my friends are the ones that help me flourish in those two areas most. And so each episode you're going to hear from me or one of my friends from around the country that I believe will help, that you listening to them will help you flourish in life and relationships as well. So each month, we try to focus in on a topic that's relevant to us flourishing in those two areas. And this month, we're talking about rebuilding your life. What does it look like to rebuild your life after you've hit rock bottom? How do you get out of the messes you find yourself in? And so I have my friend Ben Bridges here today, and hopefully you've been following along. If you want to continue following along, you can do that on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. Subscribe or follow us there. But today, I do get to introduce you to my friend Ben. Ben is the Vice President of Programs at St. Matthew's House, which is a incredible non-for-profit here in the Naples area. Ben oversees all the programmatic elements at St. Matt's, which is stuff like feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, housing the homeless, straight out of Matthew 25, recovery for those who are struggling with addictions. And so that's what he does professionally. But I knew Ben first just as a guy in our neighborhood. He's an incredible father. I love how he cares for his girls, and he's a girl dad just like me. And the way in which he's intentional with them is amazing. And he's a great husband. And he serves at the gathering on our worship team consistently and faithfully, and is just one of the best to have around. I just need 1,000 people like Ben, not even 1,000, 100 people like Ben, and we could change the world. So, Ben, thank you so much for being here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your family, and what you do.
Thanks, Sy. Happy to be with you. Girl dad through and through, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's awesome. I am a Floridian, born and raised in the Tampa Bay area of Florida. I grew up and kind of lived in the same house almost my entire life until I left to go to college. I graduated from the University of South Florida in Tampa. Like you said, now Annie, my wife, and I, we've been married for 18 years. And have 3 daughters, Lily, Marley, and Annabelle. Lily's our oldest, 13 years old. Marley's 11, and Annabelle's 7. And so they're getting ready to have their last day of school tomorrow. So we're excited for the summer and all that good stuff. Hey, Sy, are you hearing?
Yeah, I am.
Buzz?
That's okay.
They're working downstairs on our first door.
We'll see what we can do after the episode. I can maybe remove some of that background noise, so don't worry about that.
No worries. A little bit about my story. Sy, that my family goes back six generations with the Salvation Army, and all the way back to London, England. And so that was a dominant theme throughout my life and my upbringing is our family's involvement with the Salvation Army, both as like a social services organization, but most importantly for our family as our church home. So a lot of people don't know that about the Salvation Army, that it first and foremost is a church founded in 1865 by a former Methodist minister who really wanted to serve people in the streets that weren't accepted into the church. And so that was my entire upbringing was in the Salvation Army, and really formed who I am today. And so as I went through college and eventually got married to Annie, we actually have known each other since we were 7, both having grown up in the Salvation Army. Her parents were Salvation Army ministers. My parents were not ministers, but they worked for the Salvation Army. So I always joke that I was as close to being a pastor's kid as you can get without actually being a pastor's kid. And so Annie and I have known each other since we were 7. Our parents worked together, and then she kind of left as the Salvation Army moves people around, and we re-met on a missions trip back in 2002. We were on a trip together to Bolivia for the summer with a team of folks. Got together after that summer, ended up getting married. And he was a teacher. I thought my path was to be a teacher and coach basketball in high school. And the Lord had other plans. And so it came around a time where we both kind of were feeling unsettled, and we felt the Lord was calling us into full-time ministry. And so we went to the Salvation Army College in Atlanta and ended up becoming Salvation Army officers, essentially pastors and executive directors for the Salvation Army, and did that for about 12 years in a couple of different places around Florida. So serving as the pastors for those local congregations, as well as the directors of whatever social services we had going on at any given time.
And I want to pause real quick and just let people understand a little bit more about that, because meeting you, get to know your family and your story, is the first time I've really learned about the Salvation Army. I know about it. I knew that it did like social services and stuff, but getting to know kind of your story and the fact that almost like two strands of DNA, like the Salvation Army, you're involved intricately as the officer of a specific chapter or whatever, church, in leading the church, preaching, worship, all the things, and the social services, all the things you do to help those in need. I mean, those two go hand in hand, right?
Yeah. It's an amazing opportunity to live out the practical gospel of Christ, right? That we see. The mission of the Salvation Army is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and to meet human need in His name without discrimination. And so we had, the amazing opportunity to do that for 12 years, just like you said. So we're preaching on Sundays, leading worship, doing midweek Bible studies. And then during the week, I'm going to hang out with the kids at our after school program, or, sit with clients as they're coming to us for rental assistance or for food assistance. Going into nursing homes, doing emergency disaster work. So out on the food canteen after a hurricane, serving meals, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a whirlwind of a position, but a really unique opportunity to be the hands and feet of Christ, in those communities.
I've heard one of my mentors, he always said that, there's a three-legged stool in the evangelical world, where it's like there is, I'm going to try and remember these. I may get them wrong, but there is standing for doctrine is one. Morality, like individual morality, is two, and the third one is like social justice issues. And a lot of times churches will prioritize two of the three.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the churches I've been a part of, we have historically focused a lot more on doctrine and individual morality, and not as much on justice and caring for those who are in need. And justice has gotten such a bad rap in the last several years with social justice and some different movements. Biblical justice and God being a God of justice is literally the idea of righteousness. I mean, righteousness, the dikaiosune, is also translated as justice. And so God is a just God, wanting just things to happen to people who are experiencing injustice. And that goes back thousands of years beyond what happened in the last 5 years in American culture. And so I just want to affirm you in the Salvation Army. I feel like that leg that maybe a lot of evangelical churches don't prioritize, you guys do, unapologetically. And I think it's a beautiful expression of the kingdom.
Yeah, that's great. I often say, you don't really find very often in Scripture where Jesus is really calling us to a personal relationship with Him. But what He is calling us to is to love and to serve those who need. When He talks about the kingdom of heaven is like, it's not often like the kingdom of heaven is like you sitting in your room reading your Bible, although that's good, right? We certainly don't want to discount that, but no, it's like the kingdom of heaven is like all the life to the full, like love and grace and service. So you're preaching the choir on that one, man. I love
that.
Having spent our lives and you said part of our DNA, my wife and I, Annie, was Salvation Army and service to the kingdom. We came to a point where we were feeling a little unsettled just in our trajectory, both for our family and for us personally. And so we made a really difficult, prayerful decision to essentially start life over outside of the Salvation Army. we've talked, one of the big things about the Salvation Army is that every couple of years the leadership moves around to different places, and we really felt like the Lord was leading us to plant some roots for our kids and for our family. And so we began, praying on, what those next steps could be, and exploring opportunities. And it was not an easy journey by any stretch. I mean, we spent probably the better part of 2 years trying to, like, wrestling with what that looks like, and what is that? What are the implications for our family? What are we going to do? We still felt really strongly called to continue to work for the kingdom, like directly in some capacity. And so, I'd entertained a lot of different opportunities, and none of them really felt right until I had a chance to meet with my CEO, Steve, here at St. Matthew's House, and things just quickly began to fall into place. And the beautiful thing is, I mentioned the mission statement of the Salvation Army could easily be moved over to St. Matthew's House, and the mission of St. Matthew's House, which I might touch on a little bit later. And so I was really fortunate to be able to move over to St. Matthew's House, and now currently serve as the Vice President of Programs here. I have been here almost 2 years now. This summer will be 2 years here on the team at St. Matthew's House, and it's just been pure joy. Every day is an adventure. Now, every day is not without its own challenges.
I believe it.
But I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's such a cool story, man, and it's so neat to see the diligence in seeking the Lord's face in those decisions. Like, hey, we're feeling unsettled. What do you have in store for us? And yet, you had some non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Non-negotiables. We're going to be serving in the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be serving in this way in the kingdom. And I think that always helps when you make those big life decisions. Yeah. Like, what are our non-negotiables? What are our values?
Yeah.
When we moved here to start the Gathering Christian Church here in Naples, I knew we wanted to have 10% of our money going to partners, outreach, ministries, and a portion of that going to justice issues, things that we are helping those that are where there's hell. All justice is they're replacing hell on earth with heaven on earth right now on earth.
That's right.
Like, that's what we're trying to do. Like, where is there hell on earth? Okay, someone who doesn't have enough food, that's hell on earth. So how do we give them heaven on earth right now?
Yeah.
That's biblical justice in 30 seconds. I'm probably leaving some stuff out. But we wanted to do that, and we knew that we wanted to partner with Rafa International to help those who are caught in human trafficking. But I wanted to find a local organization that lived out what I would say a Matthew 25 ministries. Jesus preaches a parable about the sheep and the goats in Matthew 25, and he says, basically, if you are not feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, giving homes to those that don't have a home, visiting those in prison, caring for the sick, you're not of me. You're not one of my disciples. And it's very strong language. And so I wanted to find an organization we could partner with that did one or maybe two of those things. Little did I know that there was a thing called St. Matthew's House, which I assumed was a Catholic organization, but was started out of Matthew 25. Is that right? Do I have that story correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So 37 years ago, St. Matthew's House began here in Naples, in Southwest Florida, really just as a collection of a local ministerial alliance who wanted to do something about food insecurity and homelessness. And so to your point, we are not a Catholic organization, although we are often mistaken by one. We are not affiliated with any denomination. Recently, it's funny, we had one of our partners, who are awesome partners, sent me a note after the new Pope was elected, congratulating us on the new Pope and being excited for us. And it's, thanks. Yeah, we're happy for the Pope, just like anybody else is.
Yep.
But we have no denominational affiliation. What we say, we simply want to live out the call of Christ to serve, suffering humanity, right? To serve the poor, the addicted, the homeless. And so we do that. So 37 years ago, it was formed, and really began as a ministry to those ministers taking food out into the woods, finding homeless encampments, serving them there. Eventually grew to a shelter, recovery program, food assistance program. And so that's where we are today. So we this helps me. We've recently developed a way to talk about what we do at St. Matthew's House, because historically what we've found, particularly in the last couple of years as we've grown, is we talk to people about who we are, and we say all these things we do, and they walk away from us thinking like, man, I know that they do a lot, but that was just like too much. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly what it is they do. I just know they do good work, right? And so we're working on developing this kind of streamlined way to communicate what we do. So this is helpful. Let me try it on you and see how it goes over. So we call it the 1-3-5 approach. We've got one purpose, working to resolve 3 issues through 5 pillars. 1-3-5.
Okay.
So that one core purpose at St. Matthew's House, we'd say our core purpose, kind of our vision statement, if you will, is as an expression of God's love in Southwest Florida, St. Matthew's House is growing to ensure that no one experiencing hunger, homelessness, or addiction is alone or without a pathway for their journey from crisis to contributor. We kind of hit on that crisis to contributor, meeting people at point of deepest need in their crisis, and moving along, walking with them, right? Not just giving them a thing or a handout here or there, but walking with them so that they eventually become contributors back to society. And so that's that one core purpose, working to resolve the 3 issues of hunger, homelessness, and addiction. And we do that in 5 like distinct ways. That's through our food assistance program, our shelters, our addiction recovery program, our transitional housing, and then workforce development. That's our one purpose, our 3, what do we call them? Our 3 issues that we're working to solve, and then our 5 pillars that we work through.
That's super clear. I feel like that's super helpful to hear, because I think you're right. When you do so much, it's hard to know what to even explain to other people like what they do. It's like, well, what does St. Matthew's do? Well, I think they have thrift stores, and I think they have like restaurants and there's a homeless shelter, I think too, or whatever. So knowing that you're working with homelessness, hunger, and addiction.
Yeah. And I think too, it's, it also acts as an accountability piece for us. You're familiar with the idea of mission drift.
Yeah.
And particularly as any organization grows and you gain either more notoriety or just, a larger network, there's often a tendency to do other things and to kind of try to be all things to all people. But you and I know, like, the more you try to do that, the more watered down your organization becomes. And so it's both a communicative tool for us to talk about what we are, but also kind of keeps us accountable to keeping, our core purpose the same, and allows us to kind of vet new opportunities through that lens to understand, is this really who we want to be? Or maybe there's somebody out there that could do a better job of it, and we want to bless them and support them in that mission as well.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's why it's like, we are dying to go to Chick-fil-A and Five Guys because they serve great chicken or great burgers. Yeah. But when they start trying to serve sushi, you're like, hey, that's not, that isn't like, stay in your lane, bro, So that's definitely what I think you all do well, is stay in your lane. And it's hard to protect that. Your no is almost as important as your yes, right? Yeah. So that's awesome. Well, first of all, just to go back to that, if you're listening to this, and I want you to know, if you know someone who's struggling with one of those 3 things, homelessness, hunger, or addiction recovery, like St. Matt's, go to them. They are fantastic at what they do. That's the reason why 1% of every dollar given to the gathering goes to St. Matthew's House, because we believe in their mission and their vision and the way they approach it. And so, and Jesus is at the center of all of those things, expressing God's love. And so, man, if that's something you are going through, or someone who is going through, or you feel passionate about one of those areas and you want to help, I can't recommend St. Matthew's House enough. What are the greatest needs that you all have right now to go to the next level? Like, if you're just like, okay, this is what we do. We just want to get better at what we do. We want to expand what we do. What are some of those needs that are hoping to get you to that next upgrade, I guess, as an organization?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I like the way that you say that. We're trying to get better. We're not trying to get bigger. As often, there's a tendency to want to grow, but we want to get better at what we're doing, right? We're already pretty big. We've got on any given night, we have close to 500 people that are under our care across our shelter programs, our recovery programs, and our transitional housing. We've got across the organization about 350 employees.
Mm-hmm.
On my team alone, I've got about 120
Mm-hmm.
across our different properties. And so we're already big enough, right? And so we want
Mm-hmm.
to get better. We don't want to get better at what we're doing. We want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that we're digging into, again, not just providing a pillow for somebody to lay their head on at night, but like providing that path to
Mm-hmm.
restoration, helping them to begin to restore their lives. And so, some of the greatest needs we have is always volunteers, right? We've got a lot of staff members, but that, really only is the scratching the surface of the service that we need to provide to our communities. And so we need volunteers, working in our stores, to help generate the revenue that then pours directly back into our mission to help us support and more effectively serve more people. We need people serving in our food assistance warehouse, stocking shelves, sorting the food that comes in, helping us with some of our mobile distributions out in the community, making sure that people have food on their plates. A big thing right now that's really poignant for us is food insecurity. We've seen an incredible decrease across the board. This is nationally, not just here in Naples, not just in Florida, but across the country, both in some federal cutbacks that we've seen, but also as we kind of tail off from COVID and then some of the hurricane relief that we were seeing here in Southwest Florida. Just the amount of food that's been available to us as nonprofits has diminished greatly. And so we're really looking to our community to be able to fill that gap.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways we do that is through our food drives. And so if anybody, is interested in hosting a food drive, we have to talk about like individual support is awesome, but network support is even better, right? And so it's one thing to individually donate food, which we love. We certainly always welcome that. But if you can gather your community together to donate food, man, that just takes it up exponentially in terms of what then we are able to provide to our community. In so many of our sectors, we talk about the fact that we're really just the middlemen, right, for the generosity of community, connecting the generosity of our community to the needs that we find in our community. And so we get to kind of fill that role there. So those are some of the biggest things, particularly that food insecurity, as we seek to serve not just the people in our programs that, the people that live with us. These are our residents, the people that stay in our shelters, the people that live for 12 months with us in our Justin's Place recovery program, the families that come to us every day to our client choice pantry to select food that they can hopefully use to serve their, to meet the needs of their family for that week. And so as we see the volume of food from the federal level, from our food bank partners diminish, we've got to look for other ways that we can supplement that. Last year, we served roughly 2.5 million meals across our programs and then to the greater community. And so it's an indication that the need is still there. Here in Southwest Florida and certainly across the country, food insecurity is it's a lack of supply. It's an affordability issue, right? Food, we all know, we all go to the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
And every family that comes to us, if they had the choice to go shop at Publix or come to our client choice pantry, they would want to go to Publix, but they just can't afford to go there, right? And so we have the opportunity to step in and fill that gap, but we can only do it with the generosity of the community. So we need food.
That's good. And that's simple. I mean, I think that's something that, if I was, if I think the next question I had was like, how can the church partner with you all? And it sounds like you're saying if you're the lay person, if you're, just in the pew or in the chair or whatever, wherever you sit at when you're at church, and you're going, I want to help, but I don't know how to help. You're saying, hey, buy a few extra things at the grocery store regularly, and do food drives and bring us food. That is a huge help to helping people who are hungry and in need.
Yeah, we try to make it as easy as possible. So we certainly, if, to get specific, if somebody was interested in hosting a food drive, they just reach out to us. We set it all up. We kind of have a food drive in a box that we can provide to a community, to our neighborhood. Last year, we did about 400 different food drives around Southwest Florida. We also make it as simple as going on our website. You can go to Amazon link and buy food directly from Amazon, and it'll be delivered directly to us. So even if you don't have the means to get to a store and buy a product, you can, just go on Amazon and it'll come directly to us. And, we can guarantee that, probably within a day or two, the thing that you bought on Amazon as it's delivered to us is going to be, in the shopping cart of somebody that comes to our Client Choice Pantry to shop for their kids, for the week.
I'm going to have you send me that link, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to attach it to this episode.
Great.
And so that even as you're watching this now and you're like, oh, I want to do that, I'm going to have the link to that Amazon list on this episode so that people can just click on it right now, save it as a bookmark so that you can go back to it regularly and purchase stuff, because that's so simple for people to do. I don't know the last time we have gone into a grocery store to buy groceries. We do Walmart pickup and Aldi pickup and regularly, and so that is something that's a huge gift. This month, to shift gears a little bit, we're focusing on the topic of like rebuilding your life. Like, how do you get out of the mess you find yourself in? And, talk about the thing about the prodigal son is such a great example of someone hitting rock bottom. And verse 17 in Luke 15 says, when he came to his senses, that's that aha moment where it's like, I got to do something different. Life, the way I've done it, is not working. And so what do I need to do to get out of this mess? What are the next steps to take to rebuild my life, my second chance at life? And you all work so much with people in recovery, people who have hit rock bottom in one way or another. And so I just want to ask you some questions centered around that topic. Like, what are the common factors, as you're learning from so many stories, what are those common factors that you see that are present for those who successfully, after hitting rock bottom, rebuild their lives?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So to your point, right now, today, we've got about 150 people that are part of our Justin's Place Recovery Program, men and women who at some point over the last year, hit that point, that rock bottom point, and said, okay, I've got to do something. And so they came to us and committed to our 12-month faith-based residential recovery program as they work to rebuild their lives. As you think about like is there one particular thing that is kind of a common thread between those that are successful in their recovery journey, those that have, are able to move forward? I think that common theme is hope, that they've been given hope. We talk a lot, both in like our unhoused community and certainly with our recovery community. The main reason why so many people find themselves in the place that they are is because they've lost hope. And that can come for a lot of different reasons. But fundamentally, somebody that's had been living outside for a couple of years, certainly there was a point when they didn't choose, okay, I'm going to go, I'm going to relinquish everything and just go live outside, unless you're like in the beach in Hawaii. Maybe somebody made that concerted effort, right? But no, they find themselves in that place because at some point they lost hope. They lost hope for anything better, right? And so they kind of just resigned themselves to that fact. Like, nobody chooses to be homeless. Nobody chooses, without some extenuating circumstance, to become addicted to a drug or to alcohol, right? It's a process, and fundamentally we believe that it's because they've lost hope, right? And so one of the things that we try to do when somebody comes into us, into our shelter or into our recovery program, or even as we're interacting with them in our food pantry, is to provide hope. And I think hope is not, we're not talking about the hope that you have like when you throw a coin into the fountain. You're like, oh, I hope this thing comes true, right? But no, it's like I heard it defined at one point about it's confident expectation, right? That hope is like that something like things are going to get better, and I don't just like wish that that's true, but I have reason to believe that things are going to get better. That's what hope is for us. Years ago here at St. Matthew's House, we had a tagline of "Hope starts here," and we believe that, and like we really pride ourselves on that, but like hold that to be such an important value for us. And so we think like hope. I think hope kind of is identified as faith, community, and opportunity, right? So to give somebody hope, at least here at St. Matthew's House, we're going to introduce them to faith. If they have not already been introduced, if they already have a faith, and we're going to, work with them to kind of continue down that path. We're going to provide them community, and then we're also going to hopefully provide them opportunity, right? because here's the thing, thinking back to my Salvation Army roots, as we talked about, the founder used to always preach this mantra of soup, soap, and salvation, right?
Hmm.
And so fundamentally, we want to introduce people to Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
But when somebody comes to us off the street and they haven't eaten in a couple of days, for soup, soap, salvation, if they haven't showered, right? If they haven't had a place to rest their head, um, they're not really ready to talk about Jesus. Like they just want to have a full belly, right? They want to have some place to sleep. They want to get cleaned up. And so it was this recognition early on that like the practical gospel of Jesus calls us to meet those immediate needs before we can address the spiritual needs, right? And so the same is true at St. Matthew's house, right? We want to address the holistic needs of an individual, not just their spiritual needs, not just their practical needs, but everything that encompasses. And so we want to introduce them to faith, but we believe the best way to do that is to live out the practical gospel, to make sure that they're feeling loved in the way that we provide food for them, in the way that we provide a place for them to rest their head at night. Even more importantly, for our families that come to us, like to know that, like for a mom to come to us and to know that we're going to care for her and for her children. We're going to make sure those kids' needs are met in every sense of the word so that she can then begin to dream about what other things are possible. And so you think about faith, you think about community. In the addiction world, we talk often about the fact that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is community.
Oh, wow.
And so we work every day to build community for those that are a part of our recovery program, for them to understand that they are in this, they're not alone in this journey, but they have a host of folks that are there to love them, to support them. And then opportunity at the end of the day, because it's one thing to provide a bed to sleep in, it's one thing to provide a meal, but like what's next after
Yeah.
that, right? I mean, to be quite frank, like it's the same with faith, right? To somebody that is at their point of deepest need, who has literally nothing. Sometimes, and I say this as a former pastor and Jesus lover, like sometimes it's not enough just to say Jesus loves you, right? You're like, that's okay. I hear that Jesus loves me, but I'm really hungry right now,
Mm.
and I don't have a job, and
Yeah.
I don't have any way. Like I have no
Yeah.
dreams of being able to find a job because I have no resources at my disposal. And so we recognize that in order for somebody to really grab hold of that kingdom life that we know that they should be afforded, and that made for more life, right? That John 10:10 life. We've got to do more than just meet their physical needs. We need to make sure that we're providing opportunities and they can see a clear path, for what's next on that restorative journey. So whether that's, hope to be restored in their relationships with their families, with their kids, with their spouses, with their brothers and sisters, or specifically for us, making sure that they understand that after they leave our 12-month recovery program, we still have transitional housing opportunities for them. So it's not like you graduate and then we say, all right, good luck, right? No, we're going to be there to continue to support them on that holistic journey. And then finally, to make sure that we're equipping them with tools, with developmental and educational opportunities, so that there is actually hope and there is a path forward, so that they can find meaningful employment, so that they do gain the tools that they need to be successful in life. Again, so that they have hope, for what's next.
Man, what you just said in the last like 5 minutes was just gold, man. Faith, community, and opportunity. That's how you break down hope. Because hope can sound so ethereal.
Yeah.
It can sound so like you said, almost like wishful thinking. It's like, okay, I sure hope this happens.
Yeah.
But when you break it down, it's like, no, this is what we mean by hope. We mean that you have faith in something larger than yourself.
Yeah.
That there's people around you that support you in spite of the things that you've gone through. At the gathering, we say that your past does not define you, your present shouldn't isolate you, and your future will surprise you. Yeah. And that's the opportunity piece, right? Is that like you have a future, and it may be not what you expected. I love that. I love that. I always think about how hope in Hebrews is described as an anchor for the soul.
Mm.
And so that's not wishful thinking. The anchor is the thing that holds the boat, the ship,
Yeah.
secure in the midst of the storm, right? And
Yeah.
so that's way more than wishful thinking. There's teeth
Yeah.
to that anchor. And
Yeah.
I like how you guys break that down. I'm just like,
Yeah.
my head's just swirling thinking about all of the ways. That's how many years? 37 years
37
of
years.
working with people, trying
Yeah.
to figure out what is hope, what does work,
Yeah.
and it shows.
Yeah. And I think, along those same lines, I love how Paul talks about, I think it's in Romans, he says his hope does not disappoint, right?
Mm,
And so if we truly believe in hope, we know that it's not going to disappoint us in the end. But we have a role to play in that, right? As believers, not just as St. Matthew's house, but us as a church, like we
Yeah.
have a role to play in making sure that that hope does not disappoint.
mhm.
So
That's
we
good.
have the great joy to be able to do that.
What are some of the major obstacles that get in the way of someone trying to start over?
I think honestly, it goes back to that idea of of hopelessness, right? And so if somebody, you know, let's say somebody, they've reached that point of deepest need, and they say, "You look, I've got to change. I've got to get better," right? And we talk about, in our recovery community, it takes a little while. Sometimes, when somebody makes that realization and they want to get clean, they want to get sober, they want to be restored back to life, faith, family, community. It takes a little while for kind of like the fog of the addiction sometimes to clear out, right? But when that does clear out, one of those barriers could be like if they know that if they are uncertain about what that path looks like, if they don't have hope, if they know that when they leave our program, there's nothing left, right? That's going to be a huge barrier to their success and their ability to kind of continue to move forward positively. And so that's what we try to work on really early on, is to come alongside them, to know that they're not alone. Again, because the opposite of addiction is community, right? So we want to make sure that our people feel that community. So like even early on in our recovery programs, we work in modules. And so from the first day that a man or woman sets foot into our program, they're moving forward as a cohort, as a community of men and women. For our men, they move in cohorts of 10 to 12 guys each month. And so they build that brotherly connection, both with those 10 to 12 guys, but then also with the greater community, with the men that have come before them, with the men that are coming after them, to know that while they're in our program, while they're with us at St. Matthew's House, they're going to be surrounded with love and care, but also to know that when they leave us, in the last couple of years, we've developed and invested in an alumni network. And so we have somebody that her sole focus is working with the alumni of St. Matthew's House, to make sure that when they leave our care, whether they continue to live with us in our transitional housing or they have opportunities to go elsewhere, that they still are connected to a group, to a community, so that when they do fall, and we all fall, right? We're all human. We're all going to mess up. To know that they're not alone in that moment, and they've got somebody that they can turn to.
That's beautiful. Do you have a story to share of someone who's done this that you're able to share with us today? Someone who has taken the steps.
So many. And I think, that's one of the beautiful parts of, of my role and some of our directors. We get to see these beautiful stories of transformation and restoration happen. I think of just recently, one of the women in our recovery program, she's been with us, I think, for about 7 months. And through our family restoration piece that we have a family restoration director, which really is one of the things that kind of sets our program apart from a lot of other, amazing recovery programs, is that we have a real focus on restoration to families, to the point where we have somebody on our staff that's her sole focus is working with the men and women and then restoring them to their families, whatever that looks like. And so this woman that was with us for about 7 months, her daughter was able to come out on a family visitation weekend, and she was able to celebrate, I think it was the 5th birthday of her daughter with her. And that was the first birthday she'd ever celebrated with her daughter.
Oh my goodness.
And so, you know, we get stories like that all the time, with moms and dads who perhaps for the first time are able to now have a relationship with their kids. And as a dad, particularly as a girl dad, those things are just so powerful and resonate with me so significantly. But and I think about the moms and dads that we interact with, whose sons or daughters are going through our program. And it was just at our last graduation, I had a dad come up to me and tell me that this is the first time he's seen the light in his daughter's eyes in probably 15 years,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
And we know as parents, and really as just children of God, like we know what, when he talks about the light in his daughter's eyes, we know what that means, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to kind of describe that, but when you see it, we have these at our graduation ceremonies. We do what we call a then and now video, and so we show a picture of that person, either like on the first day they come to us, or at a time when they were like just at their lowest low, right? Whether it's a mug shot or whether it's them in the hospital, and we show that picture, and then we show their graduation photo.
Mhm.
And I mean, it is just incredible the transformation that these people make, over this journey. And so, we're really blessed to just hear story after story. I think of a mom of her son who went through our program, who tried, probably a dozen different recovery programs over his life, and none of them stuck for whatever reason. And she told me the best phone call I have ever received in my life was the call I got that said my son was in jail, because I knew that he was okay.
Mm.
I knew that he wasn't dead, essentially. And so, and this is a beautiful story of him finally submitting to the process, coming to St. Matthew's house, working through those 12 months, then coming in and living with us for 2 years in our transitional housing, receiving the love that our team was there to pour out on him. And now he's his small business owner, and actually he's getting ready to get married next year, and is doing amazing. Just played, at our golf tournament a couple months ago. And so it's just a joy to be able to watch the love of God that we know to be true, and the transformative power that's available to us that like often we talk about in church, right? But it's not always tangible, particularly for folks, let's be honest, who like have not had really tough lives, right? It's easy to sing the songs when, life has been pretty easy. You grow up, you think about Naples, and people that grow up, in not having too many cares, right? But to witness the transformative power of God through the lives of the men and women that come into our program is just a reminder of why we want everybody to know Jesus, because there's power there, right? And there's a
Amen.
power to change and to transform.
That's beautiful. I was just sitting here thinking just about that. It's easy to look at someone with a sign on the road asking for food and be irritated or frustrated or not trust them or think someone should do something, and or also be convicted, wanting to do something, not knowing what to do,
Yeah,
and saying, I want to help, but I have no idea how my helping hurts. Because that's
yeah,
true. We can help in ways that are hurtful for people
yeah.
and create more dependency, and that keep people caught in the same struggles that they're in. But I just want, anyone who's listening to this, and from you all, the church is doing something. Like
Mm-hmm.
Jesus people are doing something
Yeah,
to help those in need. And just
yeah,
sitting here and listening to what St. Matthew's House does day in and day out, with
yeah.
the support of Jesus people, of the local church, serving and being empowered to care for those in need the way Jesus told us to through St.
Yeah,
Matthew's House, is such a gift.
yeah.
And if this is something that you want to help with, you want to walk alongside people who are in recovery, who are hurting, what would that look like for that person to do? How would they reach out to you? What kind of role does a church play in helping
Mhm.
those in recovery?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, I'm reminded of a thought I heard not too long ago. I think it was by Ronald Heifetz at Harvard, but it's also attributed, I think, to Martin Luther King. And they talk about the church's role in the world, right? And they say the church's role in the world is to close the gap between the world as it is and the world as it should be, right? To close that gap. And that's absolutely, we believe that's the kingdom, right? And so as I was thinking about that idea and thinking about like our role as St. Matthew's House, we're not a church. It occurred to me, and I kind of got this picture that, while the church's role is to kind of close that gap, we're out here in the gap, right? And so I almost had the opportunity to like invite the churches and our, our fellow believers, like come down into the gap and play with us, right? Like rather than trying to pull the world to you, like let's just fill the gap, right? So come into the gap, let's just fill it up. And that can happen in a lot of different ways, as we think about church partners, as an organization, we're certainly always looking for places that we can get our people plugged into, from at a very practical level, like looking for churches that are welcoming and receiving and accepting of people that, may not look the same as you, may have had a different journey than you, but are still willing to come alongside and love those people. Again, as I think about church, and I think, the gathering is a perfect example of that. Is like, you exist, and you and Monica built this church and have this idea that like we're a church for everyone, right? You don't have to look a particular way. You don't have to have any background in faith, right? Just come to us and let's walk and live together and fellowship together. Unfortunately, we all know that like not every church is like that, right? But if we really want to be the church that we read about in Scripture, right? It's not about having the best show, right? It's about loving people well, right? That's right. Sharing resources, coming alongside and supporting in love. And so if there's churches out there that are willing to do that, by all means, like we'll bring our people to you, right? To learn what real church and faith community looks like. We also need folks coming to us, whether, again, it's like serving in our food pantry, whether it's coming and serving a meal. We serve meals every single day. Whether it's serving the community, we've got a ministry, our feeding ministry, where anybody can come to us every day if they need a hot meal for lunch and dinner. No questions asked, no strings attached. If you need a meal, you can come to us and get a hot meal. And so we serve about 50 to 100 people every day through that ministry. We certainly serve folks in our shelters here in Naples and Immokalee and Fort Myers every day. And we're also looking for opportunities for mentors. We're developing a mentoring program right now. So there's somebody out there that, you've learned things on your journey. You're in a place now where you're ready to give back. We're looking for mentors that are willing to come alongside, particularly graduates of our recovery program, to help them continue on that journey toward restoration, right? To offer that hope, to introduce to opportunities, those sorts of things. So those are some of the high level ways that people can support us.
That's great. If someone wanted to stay connected to St. Matthew's House and like what's going on, how they can pray, how they can follow even maybe you, is there like email list or a Facebook page or Instagram account to follow to do that?
Yeah.
How do they stay connected with you all?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the most for our most up-to-date information would be in our Facebook page, St. Matthew's House, our YouTube channel, again, St. Matthew's House. That's got, both like update videos, graduation videos that you can go back and watch. I was talking about those then and now videos. You can go back and watch some of those and just see the significant change that we see in the lives of our people. Instagram, St. Matthew's House on Instagram. And then certainly our website is where you can find all that information, the way that they can reach out to us. If anybody goes to that website, the very first thing that you'll see when you pop up is, do you need help? Right? Before we start talking to you about, all the things that we do or, how much financial support we need from you, which we do, right? We want to make sure that we lead with, are you here because you need help? Yeah. And if you are, go to this link, call this number, send us this email, and we'll reach out to you, within the next 24 hours to make sure that you've got the support that you need. So stmatthewshouse.org is where you can find all that information.
What is one last word that you would like to give people who are trying to rebuild their life, or need to start over, have hit rock bottom, and they don't know what's next?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's no better time than right now to start, right? We've got St. Matthew's House, and we're not the only impactful organization out there, for sure, right? Every community has their own St. Matthew's House.
Yeah.
And so I would say reach out to those opportunities. And if your community doesn't, reach out to St. Matthew's House. Our ambition is to meet the needs of our people here in Southwest Florida and to solve those problems of hunger, homelessness, and addiction. But at the same time, we have people that come to us from all over the country. At our last graduation, we had a family come to us from Alaska to celebrate their son that was graduating from our program. So we're available, so if somebody out there needs help, certainly call us, email us, go to our website and find information. But there's no better time than today to start. We often, particularly in the church, we talk about that idea of, Jesus doesn't call us to come when we're ready, right? Like when we have all our stuff together. I used to preach on this all the time. He doesn't require a checklist of us to have read through the Bible, right? And to, have gone to seminary and to be a good worship leader before he accepts us. No, like that's the beauty of the gospel is he accepts us right where we are right now, today. Nothing, like no strings attached, right? And so there's no better time than right now to begin that journey toward restoration. And we've got hope that we can introduce you to. Father Gregory Boyle from Homeboy Industries out in California, he talks about this idea of reintroducing people to their loveliness or their innate goodness, right? And for so many people who find themselves at their point of deepest need, they've lost any idea that there's still goodness in them. But we know as children of God that each of us are imbued with potential, with goodness, and with his identity, right? And so we have the opportunity to reintroduce that idea to you that there's goodness in you. Maybe you've forgotten that. Maybe it's been lost somewhere along the way. But there's people here. If you're struggling today, there's people that love you and believe in you, believe in that goodness that's there. And we want to help you rediscover that through this journey.
That's beautiful. Well, it's a great word to end on. Thank you, Ben, for your time today, for sharing about St. Matt's and for all the things that you all do to close the gap. I love that language, close the gap. If you enjoyed this content, if you enjoyed following along and hearing what we talked about, there's a lot more that was already on our channel and then coming up. So make sure you follow along, you subscribe, that you like our different things on Apple and Spotify podcasts and our YouTube channel. Share with a friend that you might find helpful, who might find it helpful, this type of content. Our next episode, we're going to be doing another Q&A session with Lindsay and Andy, so make sure to check that out. And remember, before we go, that you are made for more, so don't settle for anything less. Have a great day.